Hi everyone, my name's Declan McGlynn. Welcome to Friday Forum Live, Point Blank's weekly broadcast bringing you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight every Friday. Live from East London, today we are super excited to be joined by Martin Buttrich to talk about his production techniques and DJ sets. So today I'm joined by Martin Buttrich, one of electronic music's most prolific producers, who's worked with and remixed the likes of Depeche Mode, Green Velvet, Roger Sanchez, and many more. He's in the middle of a special 20-year anniversary world tour, alongside an impressive list of names like Carl Craig, Guy Gerber, and Robert Dietz. And if you're watching this live, he'll be playing with his longtime collaborator Timo Maas tonight at Oval Space in London. And remember, we are interactive, so add your questions for Martin in the comments and we'll get to them at the end of the broadcast. So Martin, welcome to Point Blank.
Hello.
How's it going?
Very good.
Excellent. So how's the tour been so far? It's 94-14, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, so far it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Every show has been fantastic. Can't complain.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a big fun. And it's especially great to have all those artists along with me. So
Exactly, yeah.
it's very nice.
Cool. So, and one thing I wanted to ask is 20 years in electronic music is a very long time. It's a really impressive career. I mean, what's changed on the dance floor and in the studio for you?
Well, I mean, on the dance floor, I'd say it's probably the same as it was 20 years ago. I mean, people, like to go wild. People like music. I mean, obviously, from the perspective of a producer, a lot of things have changed. The quality of the music got so much better, especially the quality of the electronic music. Like, electronic music has grown up extremely.
Matured.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like these days, it's basically possible for everyone to make music. The technology gives us now the opportunity to basically just do what we want. So, I think this is like a great progress.
And speaking of technology, I mean, how has your personal setup changed over the years? How did it start and where is it now?
Well, yeah, it started with a simple General MIDI keyboard, and well, now at this time I remember we just had like an old Atari computer,
right?
With
Cubases.
Exactly, with a Cubase that could send 16 MIDI channels, not even audio. And so basically now pretty much everything is based on computer technology. So all the host programs like Logic, like Ableton, whatever is out there, they are like so much better now already since compared to 10 years ago even. And I mean, not everything is done in the box, but especially working with computers that are so powerful these days makes a lot of things so much easier.
Yeah, have you found your hardware shrinking as time's moved on?
Well, I mean, yes, I sold a few things, but just to get a little bit more space. I mean, I keep basically all my stuff because you may not going to use them for 3-4 years, but there will be a time where this is back again, and you know how to use. So
like the M1.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm not gonna make the mistake again and basically selling things.
And you have to buy.
I might regret, exactly, for the double amount.
Exactly.
Of money,
So like collaboration, something I wanted to ask you about. I mean, it's a huge part of your career over the years. You've worked with a lot of different people. How does it work in the studio when you're working with someone else? Are you the guy whose hands are on the desk?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much like almost like an alpha dog in the studio. So I'll push actually people away,
right,
and have my hands on the control. But yeah, I mean, it depends. For me, the most important thing working or collaborate with someone, working for someone or with someone, is just how you get together, it has to click at some point. I'm not good at going with a stranger into a studio.
Right.
Like there has to be somehow some sort of a connection. And I mean, for me, those people, whoever sits with me in a room where I make music, they influence me right away. And let's say a producer in terms of someone who maybe has not the qualities or has not the skills to play something, but there are a lot of people who have the skills to make you understand what they need and to like translate this then in music. I think it's also one big part of like a producer who has his hands on the machine. So, and yeah, especially it depends what input you get, the music comes out.
So do you prefer are you good at going in the studio and working on a track from start to finish by yourself? Or would you always rather to have someone else with you?
Well, to be honest, I personally find, and I think also colleagues of mine say, I'm better with someone else.
Right.
You know, I mean, obviously when you're all by yourself all day and you work on a track, you kind of get a little bit in your head. And having someone, it's the same when, you know, you have a track and you want to play it to a friend, and the second you play it, you already feel what's wrong, you know, without actually go further in the track. And it's just this what you have constantly when you're with other people in the studio. So you have like this, you don't cross the line, you don't get too much in your head and running in a loop.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this helps to progress in a track and not work on a track for 7 days. Like when I work with someone in the studio, let's say like Loco Dice, a track usually takes 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours. I mean, it depends if it has vocals, it might take a little longer, but it's just a very quick understanding of, okay, that's good, that works, oh no, that's like a no-go. But as I say, when you're sometimes alone, you don't realize where you at.
You second guess everything, and cool. So maybe we could take a look at this track. I mean, do you want to introduce it?
Well, yeah, this is basically Tripping in the 16s, and it's the opening track of my last album, Crash Test. And yeah, I mean, right now we basically have just audio tracks here. That's basically what I do. I mean, it's, I guess, the safest way for me to keep a track by its single parts is always make everything to audio. Get the stems, because I had it a million times that I lost tracks because software changes. All of a sudden the iOS of a Mac changed and nothing works anymore. Yeah. And I have like even still tracks. I have basically old computers in order to open old tracks. Right. Because otherwise, you basically lose. And now since like a few years, I mean, in pop production, you always take all the single parts, and electronic is not so much like. Yeah,
so is committing to audio something you do for mixing purposes in terms of writing to make yourself commit to a sound, or is it really just for archiving?
Well, funny you mentioned this, because exactly that's what it is. I mean, there are sounds during an arrangement and a production you keep open, so in case, let's say, a synthesizer, you want to modulate or filter or whatever. But yeah, this is like a big point, is you also, like, you record an audio and you commit to a sound, you say that's what it is. Yeah. And well, there's always, of course, for a producer, there's always the fear of, or maybe there's too much room on it, or maybe this is, but you know, a sound, it is what it is. So it helps also to you know, go forward and work on other things, then always go back to this one sound, for example.
If it's in MIDI, you can always change something.
And you will probably, after, if you really work by yourself on a track for a long time, you probably end up the sound you like the most, changing it up in the end because you get bored of it.
Yeah, exactly. So in this track, how did it start out? I mean, what was the first thing you did? Did you usually go drums first, get a kick going? And
well, yeah, I mean, yes, let's say in a club track, I mostly start with just the drums to get like a groove. Well, in this track, as I remember, I basically started just with like some pads. So, and it was not this ones. They were great. This one here. So, and then, you know, you play around, and as I say, this is not really like a dance floor club track. This is more like something for listen. And I basically started with that, then added more and more pads. And I think in this case, the drums came pretty much at the end.
Really?
Yeah.
That's quite rare for a
I know.
Production. Yeah. Do you find you have to like fit drums around things in terms of mixing if you bring them in at that point?
I mean, it really depends how heavy those drums you know, have to want to show up in the track. So in this case, the drums are so minimal and like basically not the main part. The main part are the harmonies and more the floating kind of feeling.
Yeah, so maybe we could listen to like 30 seconds of it just to get a,
no problem.
In case anyone doesn't know it, we can get a vibe for it.
I skip one in here?
Yeah. Perfect skip. Yeah. So what synths were used to create those pad sounds and the bass sound? Can you remember what the synths were?
Yeah, I mean, I use a lot of plugins these days. They are just like, I mean, an analog synth is fantastic, but the most I find these days almost that some of the plugins almost sound better than the actual analog.
Oh, don't say that.
Well, yeah, not of course not. You can't do it with the Prophet,
Right,
but,
the Prophet 5.
for example, yeah, this is what it is. But I mean, some people may take this wrong, and probably vintage people are like, closing their eyes right now.
Yeah.
But it's like whoever had an original Mini Moog is thankful for the plugin.
Yeah.
Because you put the light on, you walk out of the room, you come back in, the tuning is gone.
Right.
And it's just like, I mean, I love to play with my analog stuff, and I'm not gonna give it away, but in order to write and be fast, and sometimes plugins are just more comfortable.
Yeah. So this was a plugin.
And this is especially with the one what I started I think that's the Omnisphere.
Right. From Spectre Sounds.
Yeah.
Is that one you go to a lot?
Well, no, I don't have a favorite machine. I just really randomly open something. I mean, I know where things coming from, or what the machine can do. So if I have something in mind, then I know where to get it from. But there's not a specific machine I use a lot.
Yeah, and in terms of drums, I mean, we were talking before we went on about you sample a lot of stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
talk us through that process.
I mean, yeah, of course. Over the past years, I mean, what I still do, like I have a week or 2 weeks where I basically get all my old drum machines out, where I get my SP12 out, where I take all the jazz CDs from my mom, and basically sample every sound and listen to electronic records, sample some bass drums. And over the past 20 years, I did this a few times. So my library is quite big, but as I say, it's still for me important to get new stuff. Even I have it probably 15 times in a different version already on my computer, but it helps also for the head to get a different motivation.
Yeah, and when you're sampling, do you sample from records into the EXS or machine or something like that?
Well, I'm just basically doing it. I'm just recording like a long audio file when I go through vinyls or CDs or whatever, and then I'm chopping them. And I mean, for me, I have everything. I work mostly on Logic, and everything. My sample library is based on the XS sampler. Right. But unfortunately, the XS sampler is not compatible to any other programs like Ableton or Pro Tools. So I'm basically switching everything now from my private library into the machine, because it's the only sampler I know that works on all platforms. So
yeah. And will we ever see your private library made available as a sample
no, I
pack?
don't think so. I mean, this is pretty. I mean, that's like everything I have almost. So I'm pretty tough on this. Even if friends ask me or colleagues like, do you have some kicks or claps? And I'm really kind of hard on that.
Really?
Yeah.
Keep it secret.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with a lot of samples from a lot of different sources, do you get a lot of mix issues in terms of making them fit together? Because those tracks are essentially mastered and finished, and you're putting them together.
Yeah, I mean, remember in the 90s when you would sample like some hip hop records, the drums wouldn't sound like, let's say, a house, it's a different frequencies. But these days everything is like so full. The frequencies are so filled, so I can sample from wherever, and it's always gonna sound good. Even if you, for example, as we mentioned, like plugins or libraries like from Machine or Battery or whatever is out there. They're sounding so good these days. So the sound issues is not really a concern. I think it's all more a matter of taste and if you like it comes out or not. But the quality, how everything gets already delivered on your table, is pretty good already.
So you've got a real sonic stamp. You can always tell a Martin Buttrich production, I think so anyway. How is that over 20 years? Have you maintained that, considering what you just said, that now things are so much cleaner? Is there a process? You always run it through a certain compressor? You always treat the master a certain way?
No, this is like I have periods in my production life where I do things only like this or only like that. There are effects in my studio where I haven't changed the preset once in 10 years.
Which preset is that?
Like from Eventide, like some
The
phasers.
H3000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I probably would break if I change it. But
So the secret to the sound is that preset?
yeah, maybe, no. But, there are few processes you go through, and there are times where I mix more. Like I start even taking all my drums on every single channel in my mixer, but there are times where I just have separated the bass drum and the bass, and when it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you analyze too much and take it all apart. I mean, I killed even songs by trying to really mix them.
Really?
Sometimes if it sounds good and it just sounds good, leave it.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for a beginner producer who maybe wants to get like a big sound in the club, and how do they approach low frequencies and sub bass and stuff like that?
Well, I always say, you don't, the machines and the equipment you have is like an advantage if you have some quality machines, but the most important thing is you need to be able to hear what you do. If you can hear what's really happening, then you also can't change it, and even the best equalizer and compressor can help you. So, like, number one is you need a proper placed sounds, and that doesn't mean you have to invest $10,000s of pounds or dollars for acoustic treatment, but you need to find the right tweak, to get it sound good. And there are a lot of ways. Even everybody can find that on the internet. You can even make it in your own living room. But be able to listen what you do is the most important part.
Yeah, and trust it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I guess test it on other systems and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I listen on like 4 or 5 different speakers, even on my laptop nowadays, because I guess 75% of all humans listening probably their music on a laptop. I don't know. I don't know much people who really have a sound system at home anymore.
Yeah.
The older ones, yes, but not the kids. They all have headphones.
Yeah. And in terms of mastering, do you have a mastering signal path you always go to in terms of plugins or hardware?
Well, no. I mean, I kind of stopped working on my sum because there are people who really trained in it to know what to do to, like, flip a song in the right direction. Like a good mastering engineer probably gives your sound another 30% on top of your production. Right. I'd say, if you have the right mastering engineer. And you destroy actually, like what I'm doing here right now with the L2, and this is like a no-go if you really deliver a master, because you're destroying more and limit the ability for the mastering engineer to do his best work. Absolutely. So when I already compress my final signal till the end, then there's not much he can do but do some frequencies. And as I say, those mastering engineers who do nothing else than bringing the songs to level, they have like a different ear. And like an ear of a producer after producing a track is kind of not damaged, but you have not an objectivity to...
Yeah, you're too close to the work.
Exactly, and those guys, they do it in 20 minutes, and the result is most likely impressive.
Yeah, and if you did have to master something, if you've got a demo or a track you want to try out in one of your DJ sets that isn't finished yet, would you just put L2 on? Do you have a certain...
Yeah, well, I'm like, an L2 is like this limiter is quite easy to, but always never use it too much because also it kind of destroys a little bit if you use it too much. You know, all the attacks are gone. And well, what I basically do, I just make sure that the sub basses are not too much. And I'm most in the club, I play on LNT, so if it's not compressed, you just turn it up and it compresses it itself in the mixer.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
And is your DJ setup, is it vinyl CDs, Tractor?
Well, yeah, I mean, what I do kind of like a hybrid thing, like a little bit live, a little bit DJing. And yeah, I don't use, I mean, I can actually mix. But yeah, I use Ableton and controllers and some effect machines. And yeah, that's more than I actually need, but.
Just rolling stems?
Yeah, for example, or even, you know, some of my tracks, I just cut a few loops and, well, let's say there's a section of where all my melodies is, I can decide wherever I play, if I play this part or not.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for me, always the most important part is like not playing the single stems on my computer, because after a while, when you play 10 tracks in a row like this, it's pretty much possible that you end up in a mess, you know, and all your faders up. And for me, it was always the most important part, to entertain people and to have a quality of sound outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, if you by yourself on stage, it's almost impossible to control yourself. Because also you get excited and then, oops, the kick needs to be louder. And as I say, in the end if you do like a real live show with machines, all the faders are just on top. Yeah. Everything is already blinking red. Yeah, and the sound engineer is like, so that's why I'm just more like practical there and. Focusing on that it sounds good and the people have a good flow and are entertained, and not there's a super cool guy who has all his single sounds and can tweak with them.
Yeah, so. Cool. Nice one. So if you have any questions, now's the time to put them in the comments. I'll just dive in and see what's here. Gibbon Records is asking, what does Martin find the hardest about making a track? What's the most difficult part of making music?
Well, the most difficult, I mean, you need to be some sort of inspired, you know, to have, I guess, to have real fun. But I think the hardest part of making a track is starting it. Right. You know, and not just switch on your computer, watch a TV show, and then eventually switch off the computer and, you know, it's time for the movie at night, or I don't know. So, yes, and of course, like the point of saying, okay, now it's enough, and now I have to start a range, and not filling up a song with unnecessary noise or sounds, just because, again, you work maybe too long on it, you get bored. So it's like, be more, the hardest part is really, start arranging and starting the track itself.
So commit to audio is a good way to move on.
Definitely.
Yeah, cool, nice one. I'll just see, Philip from Macedonia is asking, my question, so quite a long one, if he mixes and masters his tracks alone or is using some professional service for that, if so, can you suggest a mastering engineer?
Well,
any shout outs?
Man, I mean, yeah, I have my people I work already since almost 12 years now, because I work so close with my mastering engineer that, you know, if I do a mix, it sounds actually strange, but if the master engineer, because I know what will happen, for example, I do the kick a little louder than I would normally do. So when the mastering engineer compresses, it has a whole different sonic feeling. And but he knows me, I know him, and that works pretty well, especially for such a long time. But just here in London, there's so many brilliant mastering people, or like all over America. I mean, basically what you have to do is like tip in top 10 best mastering engineers. And I use Time Tools Mastering. It's like my ex-partner I started making music with like 15 years ago.
It's based in Germany, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is basically because we know each other and we know exactly what we have to do. But as I say, there's like a lot of great mastering engineers.
Do you have any tips for anyone who wants to master their own stuff?
Well, I'm not a mastering engineer, so I would probably just talk garbage now, you know.
L2. Just put L2 on there, it's fine. Low to High Records is asking to provide some tips for the mix-down process, which I know is a very long process and complicated, but if there's any maybe 3 tips on
Yeah,
mixing.
I mean, number one, don't make your monitoring too loud, because your ears have only the ability, this word.
Ability, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. To, to process, and if you're starting already too loud, you can be sure that by the end of the day, what you hear is not what it's there. Yeah. And so when I mix, let's say I start in the morning, or I even had a break of 3 hours after arranging, and I really have to mix, then be as quiet as possible. Because also then how your room sound does not matter as much anymore. So as quieter you are, and we're talking about really like you would listening to the radio in the morning when you have a shower, or exactly in the kitchen. And don't be too loud, and this helps already a lot to hear what's really happening. Also, don't forget, some speakers, even professional ones, when you make them too loud, they just start compressing, cutting off frequencies. Like Genelex is like one of my favorite speaker, but if you make it just too loud, all of a sudden it sounds like someone put a great limiter on there, and then when you really hear it on another sound system, you might be very disappointed.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was going to say though, it's like it is hard to mix quietly because you want to be excited, it's a club track. Yeah, but you want to feel what it's like.
But it's the same when you have let's say you working on something and oh yeah, it works, it's fun. If you keep on listening to that loop, you're losing already a little bit the spirit when you see it really a little bit as a process, as work, and you just have to, you can enjoy it later many times, but while you're doing it, don't overdrive yourself with the same loop, and then after 1-2 hours you don't actually, you lost a little bit this vibe.
Yeah, totally. Any more mixing tips?
Well, I mean, I'm not a big mixer because my mixing is in the process of producing.
Right, you mix as you go.
Yeah, exactly. So I create like bass drums or whatever. I already use plugins or analog compressors, and while I'm doing this, it's already kind of mixed. So the times where it really sounds like a disaster, I don't have them anymore. So it's already starting from the beginning.
I guess that comes from experience, just knowing, kind of like foreseeing problems in the future and dealing with them by rolling off or compressing.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah. Like my when I didn't have much equipment, and we would go to this guy in our town, and it would has to mix like at least 10 hours on one track, even had maybe 15 sounds, and I was just sounding terrible. Of course, over the years, and you get a little better, and especially know how to avoid problems.
Exactly.
In the past, and,
Absolutely. So we are running out of time, but I'll try and quickly throw in some more. God, there's quite a few. How do you, Richard Landroth, sorry. How do you plan the flow of a song, and how do you work with composition?
Sorry, again?
How do you plan the flow of the track, and how do you work with composition?
Well, I mean, work with composition, it depends when... I to be honest, it's funny you get asked these questions because I think I tried to start doing an arrangement in composition and had to restart probably 10 times, and it wouldn't just work. I mean, if you have composition, whatever he means with that, but if he means what I think it is, then there are tracks they just need to go straight, and you would almost make a big mistake to change anything of the flow. But during arrangement, you quickly feel when something else has to come. And I mean, there are things where, I think, okay, my track is done, I have all those parts, and then I start arranging, and then I realize, okay, this is only enough for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. There has to basically be a whole other section. Right. But this all, it's like I don't plan those things. I mean, if I work with a singer or something, yes, you have certain ideas. But it's out of, like, everything happens with me more or less accidentally or out of jamming. So I'm not sitting here on an empty screen and say, okay, I'm gonna make a track with this and the Rhodes and the trumpet comes in and then this hard techno beat. That's not what I do. Right. I jam, I play, I listen, and you know, that's about it.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we got time for two more questions, so I'll quickly get them in. Top 3 most used plugins at the moment? Go.
Definitely everything from Sound Toys since a while. Zonixis is pretty good, what's the quality, and I have to say I also use a lot of the Native Instruments stuff.
Okay, cool.
Even now they started the line with their whole compressor stuff and everything. It's all pretty top notch. So yeah, that's my 3.
Cool. And let me just say that question came from D. Berry. And one more from Gurkan Asik, who's asking, how do you make kick drums so warm, roomy, and punchy?
I don't know. Maybe I sampled the right
one. Sample the right one, yeah.
Yeah, but as I say, some of it is also, it has something to do with this whole process, and everybody who had a whole beat and compressed this whole beat knows what a bass drum does. It basically fills when you compress something, and like this tail of a bass drum that normally nobody hears, or all of a sudden comes up, and even if it's like a little noise tail, but all this gets so elevated, and basically that's what I meant with, you know, I make my bass drum a little bit louder and then compress the beat, so it gets because when you put a compressor on a bass drum, the bass drum kind of disappears.
Yeah, the sub, yeah.
Yeah, and this is what I basically try to avoid, or like more even, get an extremer is when I put the bass drum up then.
All right, so instead of compressing it, just turn it up and compress the rest around it.
Exactly.
Okay, nice one. So yeah, hopefully you got plenty of tips from today's FFL. And remember, if you want to learn more about mixing and mastering, I'm working with Logic Pro. Make sure you check out our Logic Diploma course at online.pointblanklondon.com. And don't miss Martin and Timo Maas at Oval Space tonight. And we'll be back next Friday for another FFL, so cheers.